Hello everyone, Matt here from Parse. Today we'll take a look at push notifications in iOS. Push is a great way to add real-time communication to your application. Unfortunately, it's a source of confusion for many developers, as it can be fairly complicated to set up. So just follow along with the screencast and you'll be up and running in no time. Note that you will need an Apple developer account as well as an iOS device to test push. Today we'll take a look at the 4 main steps to integrate push. First, we'll create an app ID and generate the associated SSL certificate. Next, we'll create a provisioning profile for this new app ID. After that, we'll configure the Parse app using the SSL certificate we generated. And finally, we'll configure a few things in our Xcode project. So let's get started. Before we can get our SSL certificate, we need to create a certificate signing request file. To do this, open your Keychain application on your Mac. Select Keychain Access, then Certificate Assistant, then request a certificate from a certificate authority. Enter a name and an email address, and select Save to Disk to download the .cert signing request file to your desktop. You can now close the Keychain application and open up your browser. Log into the Apple developer website and navigate to the iOS provisioning portal. Select App IDs from the menu. To create a new App ID, click the New App ID button and fill out the form. Make sure you do not enter any wildcard characters in the bundle identifier field. Wildcard characters are represented by asterisks. You can also use an existing App ID, but make sure it doesn't contain wildcard characters as well. Once the form is filled out, click Submit. Next, find your newly created App ID and select Configure. Here, we can download the SSL certificate we've been looking for. Select Enable Push, and, since we're still developing our app, click Configure beside the Development Push SSL certificate. Once you're ready to launch your app, remember to come back to this page and configure the Production SSL certificate. You should now be presented with the Apple Push Notification Service SSL Certificate Assistant. On this page, we can select Continue, and then choose File and locate the .cert signing request file we created earlier. Click Generate, and Continue, and click Download to download the SSL certificate. Now, we need to install the certificate in our Keychain and export it as a .p12 file. First, find the downloaded certificate and double-click on it to install it. This should open up the Keychain application. Under the My Certificates category, find an entry called Apple Development iOS Push Services, followed by letters and numbers. Right-click on it, select Export, and save it as a .p12 file. Make sure you do not enter an export password when prompted. But you will need to enter your administrator password. Now we need a provisioning profile which will authenticate our iOS device to install this particular App ID. Close the Keychain application and navigate back to the iOS provisioning portal on the Apple developer website. This time, select Provisioning on the left-hand side menu. If you use an existing App ID and you want to also use an existing provisioning profile, you can, but you need to regenerate and reinstall it. We'll create a new one by selecting New Profile. Here, we fill in the information. Make sure you select your developer certificate, the App ID you just created, and the device you'll be testing with. Click Submit to create the new profile. If you see Pending under the Status column, simply refresh your page. Click the Download button to save the new provisioning profile to your computer. To install it, find the downloaded file and double-click on it. When prompted by the iPhone Configuration Utility app, select Add to Library and notice that your profile has been added. You can close this app. The hardest part is now done. We just have to tell Parse that we want to use push, configure a few things in Xcode, and we'll be ready to go. Open up the Parse website, log into your account, and select your Parse app. Navigate to the Settings tab, and under the iOS Push Notifications settings, we'll select Choose File and locate the .p12 certificate we just exported from our Keychain. Since we are using the Development SSL certificate, we can use the certificate type as it is. Under Client Push Enabled, we can set whether or not the app itself will be able to initiate push notifications. For example, in a chatting app, This would be a must to allow clients to send messages to each other while the app is not in the foreground. For our sample, we'll select Yes and click Save. We're finally ready to create our iOS application. Before we begin, we'll make sure that the app ID and the provisioning profile are both properly set in our Xcode project. Fire up Xcode and open up your project. Let's start with the app ID. Under the Supporting Files folder, find the -info.plist file. Modify the bundle identifier field to match the bundle identifier of your new app ID. In our case, that is com.parse.samplePushApp. Now we need to make sure that the provisioning profile is correct. In our project settings, select Build Settings and find Code Signing Identity. All the values under this heading should be pointing to the provisioning profile we created earlier. Select your project under the Targets heading and repeat that same step. Under Build Settings, find Code Signing Identity and ensure that all values match that same provisioning profile. Everything should now be set and ready to go. So let's write a small application that will accept push notifications. We'll start in the app delegate. First, we need to register the current device for push by calling the method register for remote notification types in the app delegate's application did finish launching with options method. Next, we implement the callback method application did register for remote notifications with device token. This method is called after the device is successfully registered. Here, we need to inform Parse of this new device by calling the storeDeviceToken method on the pfPush object. Next, we subscribe the user to the broadcast channel represented by an empty string. In the event that the device fails to be registered, we can implement the callback method application did fail to register for remote notifications with error to handle the error. In our case, let's just print it out. When a push notification is received while the app is not in the foreground, it is displayed in the iOS Notification Center. But if the notification is received while the app is active, it is up to us to handle it. To do so, we implement the application did receive remote notification method. In our case, we will simply ask Parse to handle it for us. Parse will create a modal alert and display the push notifications content. So now everything should be complete. We can build our application, plug in our iOS device, run it, and close the display. Let's try sending a notification. Return to your browser and navigate to the Push Notifications tab for your Parse app. Here, we can send a message on the broadcast channel. So let's try it. We click Send, and here it is on our phone. So let's open up the app and try sending another one while the app is in the foreground. Here, Parse created a modal dialog for us and populated it with the notifications content. So today we took a look at the entire process for setting up push notifications with Parse. First, we created an app ID and downloaded an SSL certificate associated to that app ID. Next, we created a provisioning profile for this app ID. Afterwards, we configured the Parse app by uploading the SSL certificate. And finally, we configured our Xcode project to use both the app ID and the provisioning profile, and we implemented the necessary methods to register a device for push. So check us out at parse.com to learn more about using push with Parse, to find cool ideas on how to use push, and for troubleshooting tips. Thanks!